Well, good morning. I promised to be on here yesterday, promised to be on here at 8 a.m. So I'm like a minute late. I apologize, but I had to get my coffee and again, my favorite mug. Currently, Megan Bonney is working to share this live video from my personal Facebook page so that other people can see it. So I'm just giving a minute for that to happen.
I'm working.
So, how are you guys doing? We'll get started here pretty soon. Once she gives me the go ahead that she's actually sharing it. All right. So I think she's sharing it. So good morning. I will try to pay attention to your comments on here, but I'm not necessarily great at that because I'm kind of like talking to you and then trying to keep track of what I want to say. But I'll try to pay attention if people chime in and want to ask questions. So you can share it from your page too if you want. All right. So yeah, let's just get started here. How do you go about having a difficult conversation with somebody that you love? Now, Alpha Omega Elevation primarily is helping people with opiate addiction. So this can be approaching someone who is struggling with addiction that you love and care about. But sometimes we have to have tough conversations with other people in our lives that we love, with a spouse, about something that's bothering us and about, just something that needs to be talked about. I think the first what that we have to ask ourselves is, what is your history with this person? So if I'm going to speak truth into someone's life, especially if they haven't asked for my opinion, I need to have a relationship already established. So if I'm just randomly going up to acquaintances and saying, hey, I need to talk to you about your drug use, that is not going to be effective. What you have to do is have an actual relationship with this person so that there's some love there, so that there's some feelings. Hopefully there's a background of trust. And that way they can actually hopefully know that you're coming at them with concern and not trying to attack them. And that's going to be the key. That's going to be sort of this recurrent concept that we're talking about this morning, is how we're coming alongside a person instead of coming at them and attacking them. So the first what was, what's your relationship? The second what is, what's your motivation? So why are you having this difficult conversation? Like, what are you hoping to gain from it? What it comes down to is it's not about you. It can't be about you. That's not going to be effective. You have to make the conversation about the other person, the one that you care about. In our hearts, deep down, most of us are just selfish. So if you come at me with what I'm doing wrong and how it's affecting you, I'm probably going to throw up the defenses and just block you, right? This wall comes up and I'm going to hide behind it, and I might even hurl some attacks back at you. And if that's one of the things when you start learning how to communicate, is it's very easy, if we're not approaching that person with the right way, with love, that they are going to attack us back. And that might happen anyway, even if you're coming at them with the best of intentions and with the best skill set for communication. So if that happens, if you approach them with love and they still like, well, you do blah, blah, blah. The important thing there is to get all Aikido on them, right? Like the martial art, like they're coming at you and you just fade away. You just redirect their energy. So you're not attacking them back, because, if they feel like you're coming at them and then they're coming back at you, and then you have to counter bigger and then they're counting bigger, and that's how conflict escalates. So that's not what we want to do. So the first what was, what's your history? The second what is, what's your motivation? When it comes down to motivation, always approach them in such a way that you're making it about them, about helping them find what they want in life. So as an example, if we're going to go up to somebody who is struggling with addiction and our motivation is all about them, then, maybe the approach looks something like, hey, I know that you're struggling with this, and I feel like that it just must be such a huge burden that you're carrying around, right? Like, you're not making it about you, you're making it about them. So the third what is, what's your approach? Like, how do you get that started? And this is critical here. This is a gem. Mostly what we do, which is not effective, is something along the lines of a harsh startup. So it's, I can't believe that you always do this, that, and the other, and I'm tired of it, blah, blah, blah. Whoa, what's that do to you if I'm coming at you that way? Again, another wall, right? So ineffective. So yeah, all that stuff might be true, but that's not going to be how you're able to effectively communicate that with another person. So instead of a harsh startup, which we want to do kind of innately, because usually these things have pushed our buttons and we're angry about them, right? Instead of a harsh startup, try a soft startup. And that's going to look something like this. Hey, I know this might be a tough conversation, but something that I really want to chat with you about is this and that, and kind of ease into it, right? Kind of dip your foot in the water and test the temperature, and just come at that person with love. Another effective communication skill in that situation, as the conversation is starting to evolve, is I feel, and then fill in the blank. So rather than saying, you always disrespect me because you never clean up after yourself, and I can't take it anymore. It's like when you leave your clothes on the floor. My wife doesn't do this, I do this. When you leave your clothes on the floor and I keep picking them up, it makes me feel like my time isn't important to you. So it's hard for somebody to argue with how you feel, right? But if we just make these blatant generalizations, that's very easy to defend against. It's very easy to argue. So one of the approaches for what's your approach is going to be that soft startup, and then I feel ... And then, so we've covered what's your history with this person, what's your motivation, what's your approach, and then lastly is what's next. What happens after you get that conversation started? So this is important. This is where I struggle. And because it's that you have to actually sit back and listen. See, not just listening to respond. That's what gets me in trouble. Because of my personality, I tend to, if you're talking to me, and especially if the conversation's getting a little heated, I'm coming up with my response. So I'm not actively listening. I'm not listening to hear what you say. I'm listening for my retort. And I'm pretty good at arguing, so my retort's probably going to be good, and I'm going to be like, yeah. And that's not how conversations evolve and get to meaningful talks and something that's useful and actionable. So it's about listening and hearing, like just listening to what the other person says. That's the key, like hearing the feelings behind it, and then maybe even exploring their feelings further. Like, okay, well, tell me more about that, or I didn't realize you felt that way. Can you explain it? And so That's going to help get this soft start conversation off to a better beginning and hopefully allow you to get to some deep stuff so that if the person's struggling with addiction or it's just an impasse in your relationship that you've met, you can kind of get to the heart of the matter. And then my other last bit of advice is if you feel your gut getting all wrenched, right, and tight, and you can just feel that like punch in your stomach, that's the time to step back and take a break. Because when we're getting that punch in the gut and the conversation is not feeling right, our brain gets disconnected from our heart and our mouth, especially. And then we're vomiting harshness on this person that we tried to approach with love. So you don't want your heart and your brain disconnected. When you're feeling that inside here, that's a sign to you that that's happening, that there's a disconnect and this conversation's getting ready to tank. And when you're feeling that, you cannot listen effectively. So we'll just take a question here. So it says, so what mental tools do you use to be a better leader when you're still defensive and not listening to formulate your response? Well, I think, one of the things that's helpful is just taking a pause in the conversation. Somebody wrote a book called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Go. And the idea of the book is that when things are coming at us or when we're afraid to make a leap and maybe step outside of our comfort zone and do something, if we count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it gives enough space in our brain for the emotional part of our brain to not be in total control, and for us to be able to shunt some of that thought energy into the thinking rational part of our brain. It's a pause in time. It's a gap. It's a space in which we can actually make better decisions. So even if I'm having a heated conversation with my wife, and if I can practice this, right, because it's not going to come naturally, if I can practice this and have just enough time to pause and reflect, and think before I speak. In the Bible, in James, it talks about the tongue and how it is full of evil and it can set an entire forest on fire. And so if we're able to train our tongue, which really comes down to training our heart, our emotions, and our brain to not disconnect, right? So that our tongue is just going off on its own. So if we can take a mental pause, I've also heard it described that if you can count to 5, but not in your native language, that it helps you. It's that same idea of pause. So those are a couple tricks that I would try. And it's going to take practice. So, maybe start with some stuff that's not overly nuclear bomb material, right? Like some practice it. And, just in your relationship with this person that you're wanting to have a conversation with, practice coming alongside of them and helping them. If my wife and I can feel like that we are, that the problem that we're experiencing is external to us, right? Like she's a good person, I'm a good person, maybe some of our behaviors aren't right, but the problem's external to us, then instead of coming at each other, we can come alongside one another, shoulder to shoulder, and we can face that problem together. And I think if you could pattern that in your life, it's going to bless you. It's going to make these difficult conversations a little bit easier. See, I know when Megan comes to me with an issue that she's coming out of love, even if it's something I don't want to hear. And maybe there's initially a defense that goes up, but I got to be honest with you, because of where we are in our relationship, um, that defense doesn't stay up very long. So it's more like that sort of innate knee jerk, I'm going to protect myself. And then very quickly, and I think a lot of it has to do with her skills of showing love, but very quickly, my defenses come down and I'm able to hear what she says. And even if I don't necessarily agree with it, I I listen and I take it to heart, and at a minimum, I am reflecting on it later so that it's still percolating around in my brain and having an effect on me and helping me to grow and be a better person. Anyway, I love you guys. I hope that you found this helpful. If you did, feel free to share it and yeah, post in the comments questions that you have or thoughts or feedback. Appreciate you. Bye.